And we are live. Isn't it wonderful? I welcome everyone. This is Island Space. Island Space Caribbean Museum has been just so honored to be able
Isn't
to
it wonderful?
offer a wonderful opportunity to some creatives in our community. We had a workshop that was just really brilliant for all that has come from it. It was called Through the Caribbean Lens, and we have some wonderful participants to share with you tonight. The goal of today's broadcast to have our panel discussion today is really to share a little bit about what we're doing at the museum, some of the programming that we've organized, and to hear from the participants about what impact it has had on them, what it will bring them to do in the future, and really overall it's really about just getting to have a greater sort of community understanding of the things that are happening right here in our fantastic museum. I hesitate and I stutter to say it, but it is the Island Space Caribbean Museum, and this particular panel is for our recently completed workshop series Through the Caribbean Lens, and it is about the artists. So let's meet the artists. Our artists who are here, who participated and have agreed to join us on this panel discussion are, I don't think you see their names, so I'm going to tell you. In the brown shirt for the Reed family is Gregory. In the plaid tie for the Wright family, I love it, is G. In I see everyone to pick their outfits out. And in the in the what are we gonna call it? A beautiful button-down Oxford shirt is Ryan. Ooh, good move, Ryan. Love it. And then of course the beautiful, the young, the talented Danielle. Thank you for all being here. We're going to learn much more about each and every one of us and why we're here, what this means to you. But I'm going to start by calling on, and I hesitate to say it this way, but I'm going to call on my very good friend because I know my good friend is going to be super confident and have a lot to say. So I'm going to start with G, my bona fide. G, I want you to tell us a little bit about who you are and what was your journey to get into this class, through the Caribbean lens. And if you could just do a concise, who are you and why do you love photography and what do you hope to gain from your participation in this particular workshop?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for hosting this Island Space Caribbean Museum. The workshop was, it really drew me in. I've always loved photography, but I never felt like I was going to take a class. Seeing that it was two classes, 2 2-hour classes, and it will culminate in an exhibit really motivated me to participate. I've always loved photography. I love photography to capture memories. I'm nostalgic. I'm a storyteller. Also, I'll say I'm a storyteller, and typically I write. And this was a way for me to tell a story in another way using my visual voice. So I do a lot, but I would say for this context of this talk, I will identify as a writer, an LGBTQ advocate, and someone who's just really very motivated to share the LGBT community that's not really very visible in the Caribbean community.
Well, thank you very much. I'm going to turn it over to another one of my great friends, and someone who I know has been doing photography probably as long as me, maybe longer, but who is a star in my world, and my colleague, Mr. Gregory Reed. Gregory, if you don't mind, could you tell me a little bit about your journey here to this class? What brought you to join us? Who are you? And why do you love photography? And what did you hope to gain from participation in this workshop?
So this has, number one, thank you, Island Space, Island Museum. This has been a great opportunity to kind of polish my stone, so to speak. It was a great venue, a great set of classes that gave me an opportunity to see where I was in the process of being a photographer. So like you said, I have been doing photography for about 15 years, and I've done a lot of editorial work. I've done a lot of projects on my own. I'm a filmmaker as well. So my goal was to learn from people that had been in spaces that I had never been in before. So when you look at CW and when you look at Carl, what they have done is talk to a broader audience. And I wanted to learn and to take away how to talk to that broader audience as well. Not that I haven't done it before, but I think that it was a great opportunity to learn from people that stay in that space consistently and work that way. And that's what I wanted to do. Thank
Oh,
you.
that's awesome. Thanks so much for that, Greg. And I'm gonna go. Funny enough, I'm gonna stick to sort of almost the experience level. I'm gonna go with Ryan. Ryan is someone who I did not know before, and so meeting Ryan first on Zoom for our first workshop, and then also in person when he came to the museum to continue. I'm excited to hear from you, Ryan, because I don't know much of your story, and no one here would be any less interested. So I really want to hear from you. Give us a little sense, Ryan, of what brought you here. Who are you as a photographer? Who are you in general? And what did you hope to gain when you started participation in the workshop?
Yeah, thank you, David, and thank you to Island Space and the Island Space Museum for this fantastic workshop. I really recommend it to anybody who's been who's looking to gain new skills and kind of connect with other photographers around the Caribbean. My name is Ryan Jiha, and I was born and raised in Haiti. I think that's where my journey started. Just understanding, being born in Haiti, I always wanted to sort of understand where I came from and the history of the country and this beautiful country that's often misportrayed in the media and often, and for me, it was about contributing to the storytelling aspect of what was it shown in the images that I was used to and the world is used to see. So I think that's kind of what motivated me to pick up a camera and finding the beauty in where unfortunately, there isn't much to see unless you go very deep inside and outside of Port-au-Prince. So my story started in Port-au-Prince, growing up in Port-au-Prince. But then when I left Haiti, studied global health and international development, and re-engage in Haiti after the earthquake, I think that's where you sort of get outside of my comfort zone and get outside of Port-au-Prince with a camera and sort of explore and discover a whole new side of a country that I thought I knew, but unfortunately I didn't know any more of it. And just connecting with everybody in the Caribbean, it seems like I don't know much about the Caribbean, so I'm definitely more curious and going to explore a bit further.
That's brilliant. I love that answer, and thank you so much for sharing. I can tell you, I don't know much about Haiti, but I've been there, and in my experience there, it's just a beautiful country with beautiful people and delicious food and tons of culture, tons of history. Yeah, I'm excited that you joined and that you're using your visual voice in this particular way.
Thank you.
To the other participant, Danielle, who is here on the call, you've heard the question. I don't need to repeat it, but I'm just going to say, Danielle, tell us a little bit about who you are and what was your journey to this particular workshop that we've all participated in, and why do you love photography? Share with us a little bit about who you are and what did you hope to gain from this workshop?
First off, thank you to Island Space for putting this program together. It was very informative, and I loved being able to sit with a group of photojournalists and talk about our passion, what we love. And I've been a photographer for 6 years, and due to the pandemic, I haven't been able to get out this past year as much as I like and capture. And this workshop was the best opportunity for me to get back out there and start doing what I love again. I love photography because I love being able to capture moments that matter and also being able to preserve our culture, our history. And I think it's important to have that progress and have people to be able to look back on our images and see what we're all about.
That's wonderful. I thank you all. We started off really great, and you guys, I love that you're all thanking Island Space, and Island Space is something that I am very integrally involved with. So I appreciate all those shout outs. But I really, as a board member and as the chairman of the board, the president of Island Space, I want to thank you all for participating, not only in the workshop, but for taking your time this Tuesday evening to come on and to share and to be open to any of the questions that I have. Now, some of your answers to the first question wants me to take off and go in a different direction. But I do want to first give an opportunity to everyone who is online to sort of get a sense of what it was that you guys learned. So I know I already asked what you hope to get, and you guys been giving props and praises to what Island Space did, but stripping it away and just coming down to like what was meaningful to you in terms of what you got. What is it that you learned? For example, I'll say this: I'm a professional photographer myself, and I do this as my love and my passion as well. I do many art exhibitions. And in being a part of this workshop, I know that my takeaways are also, impactful on me. I'll say this specifically, like, just hearing, again, we're speaking of course, Carl Juste, who was our primary instructor, as well as to CW Griffin, who was also our instructor. What they brought for me that I thought was extremely important was in terms of how is it that we tell stories? What is it, what's our approach? How do we make a picture? So there was an intentionality about how they discussed their work and how we should approach the work. I'd love to hear from each of you. Let's start this time with, let's go with Greg Reed to start off on this one. Greg, tell me, what did you take away? Is there anything that you learned that just gave you a different viewpoint on photography from what it was that they shared with us? Is there anything that you mentioned?
Well, what they provided me with was the ability to see confidently that my processes were true processes and that you never stop learning the process. So by being with them and hearing how one example would be, shoot 360, take the camera, and although you do have a primary subject, there are subjects around you that if you are paying attention, which as photographers we should be, if you're paying attention, you can capture not just your primary subject, but multiple subjects in the space that you're in. And it's okay to come to a location, to come to a shoot with the experience that you have. Our lives and our ability to see are based on not only the physical nature of our eyes, but our experiences. Our experiences help us capture images that we're in the moment with. So what I took away from our instructors, as well as the group of photographers that were present, as well as online, was that it's okay, and there's a confidence level that you walk in the door with, but you also now increase that confidence level as you learn from others. And it's important to learn from others and to continue that learning process. That's what I took away.
All right, Danielle, I want to ask you something along the same line. But in talking about what you learned, I want you to also talk to me specifically for, I believe this is your first exhibition. And I believe also that in our second workshop, it must have been the first time that you had ever been asked to choose whether someone else's work should be included or not included in the final selection. Talk to me a little bit about what that was like. How did it feel to be given that that power, and was it uncomfortable? Did you feel good about it? How did it help you to think about your own work? And then just what did you take away in general from the overall workshops that you participated in?
Yes, being able to critique everyone's work, that was an interesting experience. It was very, I wouldn't say uncomfortable, but it was very odd at first because I didn't want to disregard someone's photo. But after going through the process and, just like Gregory said, it's constantly a learning process. And from the elements that we learned about light, being able to invoke emotion, that was the main, I feel that was our main goal, being able to invoke emotion through our photos. So that's what I had in my mind while I was critiquing those photos, was that, is this going to move someone? Is this going to make someone feel something?
That's excellent. Thank you so much. And I'm going to follow that up with just really asking G, if you don't mind, talk to us a little bit about that experience. What did you feel you learned, and what did it feel like when you were being asked to critique others' work, in terms of, is it to be put in the show or is it not to be put in the show? Give us your thoughts.
Well, first, I'm not sure if I pointed out, I am the amateur in the group, the novice. I believe I'm the only one who's never done photography, right? I don't have, other than my cell phone or family photos. So that was a whole new experience for me. I never thought, in the first workshop, I heard Carl talking about a visual voice and visual language, and I never thought about that. Selecting the work, that was something I didn't expect. That was really hard. And I'll be honest, my first set of pictures didn't make it. So that was really frustrating for me. So I know that photography is hard. One of my best friends here, David Muir, is a photographer for many, many years. I've seen that it's difficult, but being where I'm the one doing it, and I had this goal that was not achieved. I thought it was, but it wasn't. Was frustrating, but in the end, the fact that I had to go back in and try more made the experience really more powerful for me, and I felt more. It was more rewarding. But initially, that part where we're selecting, and I realized that, I may not get work in, and I didn't. I mean, my ego was blown, but that it also showed me I just have a lot of work to do, and it was a short time. But overall, great experience.
Thank you. So Ryan, let's talk to you now. Ryan, again, because I don't know your background as well, and I heard your brilliant discussion about showcasing a different reality of your homeland of Haiti. I want to know, because I know for the first session you were not here with us physically. You were participating via Zoom. And then, you came in, and a lot of your imagery was of Dominican Republic, or definitely being outside of America. Talk to us a little bit about what it was that you learned in the workshop, and what you think it did for your sort of making pictures for this project.
Sure. I think the idea of making an image was probably the first time I've heard it, was during this workshop, and I really love that. I think it's somebody else said that really, it's not the camera. So another thing I learned, and I keep recognizing and realizing more and more, is that gear really doesn't matter, right? So you're taking an image with your heart and with your eyes, and as an extension of what emotion you're feeling, with the goal, obviously, to sort of relay that emotion to a viewer or an audience. But so if gear doesn't matter, and really the image is yours, and then you have all the flexibility and responsibility to sort of make that the way you feel like it is. And a lot of it could be before or after an image has been taken in the post process, which I often spend a lot of time on. And the other thing too that I've learned is, being part of this group, is we have a large have a large selection of photographers from the Caribbean, and obviously people with decades of experience, and myself, who reflecting on my journey, couple of years. But within these couple of years, I've failed enormously. I mean, even if my select were chosen from the Dominican Republic, you haven't seen the ones that were terrible, right? So it's okay to realize that it's a journey, and that obviously you feel less and less, you'll get better and better as time goes on, and trust your instinct to sort of connect and get your creative voice out. So I don't know if I answered your question, David, but that's...
You did great. Ryan, I want to keep you on while your images are being shown. Thank you, Khalid. If you could leave his images floating here. Ryan, if you could speak to us a little bit about, like, for example, the image on the screen. Well, I guess they're rotating. So for example, this one where this gentleman is laying on the cold, I'm assuming cold concrete. This was a picture that was selected. It is hanging right here in the museum. Talk to us a little bit about what was happening for you to capture and author this image. What was his consent like? And just give us a little overall about what this was like for you, creating or making this particular photograph.
Sure. I think it reflects sort of my personal voice and my personal preference of photography. It's really I'm more inclined to do street photography. I love exploring. I love walking the streets wherever I am and wherever I am. And always having a camera on hand not only forces me to focus on the moment, but I also connect with people. And for me as an introvert, that's the part where I get outside of my comfort zone. But then, this particular picture that you saw with the gentleman on the floor, on the concrete floor, I met by accident just walking in a town in the Dominican Republic. He was Haitian. Just knowing, the struggle that Haitians have to deal with anywhere in the world, but particularly in the Dominican Republic, with being migrants and being of darker skin and being discriminated against, obviously I had empathy and automatically started speaking Creole with him, and he got, that's one of the, it's as if I was talking to a friend, obviously, and he got very comfortable right away. I do not necessarily ask for consent when I take my pictures in a street photography context, but for him, I felt like he wanted to be seen. I felt like, and that's usually the case of what I, of my subjects whenever I'm taking pictures in the streets. I feel like, especially oppressed subject matters, such as a Haitian in the Dominican Republic. They don't often have the possibility to show themselves in the way they want to be shown. And what I really wanted to portray is the dignity of this person who's working extremely hard in a very challenging context. And I wanted to show him in his environment, in his safe place, however meager that may look to us, but that's what he has, and he has agency to tell his own story, and that's what I wanted to portray.
Thank you. I want to move it along, but I want to ask one last thing about that image that we were just focused on.
Sure.
In terms of that image, what drew you to go down to his level? Because that's a different picture if you shoot it from above him, standing above, but he's
right.
laying on the ground and you're at his level. Tell me a little bit about what instinct or what had you go down to his level to capture that shot?
That's a good question. I think compositionally, it made a lot more sense. I wanted the Nike shoes to be Nike sandals to be in part of it as well. And I also refrain from, that's one thing we've learned. The techniques, is the angle of your camera matters, right? And how, in street photography, I usually take it from the waist down. But in this case, again, my goal was to show this man who we've connected for a few moments, to show him in his best light. and also as a human being, as anybody else, who deserves to be where he is. And I think I just felt like taking it from above would have diminished him, which usually is the case. So I often, when I want to put somebody in to valorize somebody or put him in a good light, I'll take it from either above or at the same eye level, and that's kind of where it came from.
Okay, I thank you for that. And so now, again, moving it along, trying to make sure I get the sense of it. I want to go back to Danielle. And Danielle, as a part of what we were doing in the workshop, we talked about this process of making a picture and getting things in place. So I noticed that in your work, a lot of the imagery is candid, and particularly with animals. So if you could just speak to what it's like. How do you put yourself? How do you get yourself? How do you find a way to be in the right place at the right time, not just for a candid, but for a candid that involves animals that we can't really interact with? There's no communication level. Talk to me a little bit about your process of making a picture with animals, and how do you get yourself into the right place for that?
For me, I've always felt a connection with animals. Actually, when I was younger, I wanted to be a veterinarian, and then I fell in love with photography. But, one of the things that CW actually said that stood out to me is that, the emotions seen in animals are universal to humans. So, when you're around animals and you study their faces, it's just it's almost just like looking at a human portrait. With this picture I took at the racetrack, it reminds me a lot of competition, and it really was. As the horses were coming down the line, I had my shutter speed set to 4,000, and I zoomed in just to make sure that I got that shot. And I think that it was a plus as I was going through my frames, and I realized that I had caught the jockey and his whip as well. I thought that was even better to add to the movement and the motion of the photo.
Wonderful. I thank you for that. I think I too agree that that's a beautiful story that the jockey raised from the horse, and his hand action showcasing that he's gonna show the horse the whip, which I'm not a fan of, but at the same time it's competition, and that's gonna get him to cross that finish line ahead of the other competitor. Now, continuing with that thought. There's an image. I don't know if our behind the scenes team can put up the one with the birds, but it seems like this family, whether it's brothers or cousins or lovers or whatever, there's this image of these birds. I'm not seeing it come up, so I'm assuming they don't have it. But it's really just so amazing. I could walk over to it, I guess. Maybe I should do it, but I'll do it later. Speak to us about a little more on. You say that that these types of emotions are seen in humans, and they're equal for the animals and so on. But if you could, do tell me, how is it that you come up with your thought on, yes, I am I am making this picture. What's the patience like? How long did you wait to get this type of picture? Separate from the horses, which they're coming to the finish line. When you're dealing with these animals that may or may not give you the shot, what gives you the confidence to continue awaiting that opportunity to make the shot?
It takes a lot of patience, like you said. It's not like taking a portrait of a human where you can direct them or guide them as to what feel of the photo you want. You have to, especially with the birds, you have to almost listen to what's around you, watch their movement. I took that photo at Butterfly World, and I actually didn't get that shot until like my second time walking around the park. I decided to go back into the bird encounter just to see, what they were doing before I left. And that's when I got that shot. It's almost like being there at the right moment and the right time.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I'll share an experience of my own. Um, when I was doing Pieces of Jamaica, about 12, 14 years ago, I was working on the images for that book. I really wanted to get some images of Carnation Market, or they call it Curry Market, downtown Kingston. But I literally had to go back maybe 10 times to get the shots that I wanted, because even after spending an entire day sitting in the market with the vendors, they're not animals like birds. They're humans, and they're even less trusting, and they won't allow you to get a really great candid shot of them until they truly feel comfortable and truly understand that you're not just there to take something from them and run away. So having to go back over and over multiple days to be able to build that level of trust, to build that sense of, yes, he's not just here to steal some part of my soul with his pictures, but that he's actually here and he's given in these different ways. So I totally comprehend what you're saying, but I point out it happens to all of us in all circumstances. So I'm going to bring this around to Greg now. And Greg, just asking you, because I know a little bit of the work that you do in journalism, and I do want you to speak somewhat to that as well. What is it like to wait for the moments that you want? If you could talk to us a little bit about the process of making a picture in the political realm or in just journalism, when you're sent on an assignment or you've assigned yourself something and it just takes a really long time to get what you're looking for. Talk about that process.
That process is the word patience. And it doesn't just run over to you and it becomes a shot. It's a lot of things that require your timing, the subject's timing, the lighting, your perception of what's going on in that time and space that you're in. And you literally have to stop, take a series of breaths and say, okay, where am I in this space? And what am I observing in this space? And there are times when what I'm coming after, and that's a great example, what I'm coming after does not reveal itself right away. The subjects within this particular photo were at a prayer event, and there had been several prayers of which I had already captured images. But all of a sudden, the representative, she dropped to her knees. And the other photographers were looking at their images and they were talking and they weren't really paying attention. When she dropped to her knees, I understood that either she wasn't feeling well or she had caught the spirit. But what I really was trying to get was an expression, an understanding of what she was going through and how could I capture that. So I dropped to my knees just as she had dropped to hers, because Ryan is correct. That shot above her looking down would not have been the same type of a shot. But I also want to make sure that I say that you bring your love of the camera and your love of telling the story with you. And part of what's about what you do is you bring your understanding of history to the current event where you're standing. So that space that you're in, that time and space that you're in, requires that you understand what's going on. Now, this is a young man that was a football player for the Florida State Seminoles. And he was a Haitian fellow that was now the quarterback for Florida State and had just scored a touchdown at the Orange Bowl, which it was a historical event, not just because he was on the field, but the fact that he was on the field, the fact that his Haitian family had gone through everything that they had gone through historically, and he had walked on to and had become this particular leader of a state football team that is nationally ranked, was just the most incredible thing that I could imagine at that particular moment. So while you're at the game, you're going to capture a lot of shots, but you have to bring with you your understanding of the history of where you're standing, time and space, and now apply that understanding to the images that you're capturing. And that's why you're seeing what you're seeing is you do your homework, you do your research, and you just don't show up. You try to have an understanding of where you're going and why you're standing in that space, and you've been given that privilege.
I ask you one more question about that same picture, because as another photographer who has shot football games, for example, I have to ask, how many cameras, how many lenses do you have, and how do you decide what it is you're going to get in this specific historic moment? How do you choose from? Do you use your 70 to 200? Are you going to shoot your 24 to 70? How do you know what's going to tell that story in that moment? It's happening at lightning speed. You can't remake it. How do you make that selection?
So what took place before that frame was he weaved his way from the scrimmage line from about 10 yards away from the end zone, and he worked his way through it. So I was on the long lens trying to get the detail of him carrying the ball. But as he crossed the line, he was too close to me, so I had to drop that one and pick up the 24 to 70, because that's where the energy was going to be concentrated. So as he came closer to me, I wanted to be able to get as much of that image, as much of the celebration as I could get. And with a 70 to 200, you're just not going to be able to get all of that detail. And it made more sense just to pop wide as far as I could go and grab as much of that audience and grab as much of the other players and the players celebrating with him in order to get that shot.
Wow.
It did, and you're right, it did happen within a split second. Mm-hmm. And of course, you're trying to make sure that you don't get run over. So you're trying to make sure that you do all of the things to keep yourself safe. But what the editors want, what I want for myself when I capture that image, is to be able to tell that story to someone that wasn't there at that time and at that space the way that no one else could tell it.
Absolutely. You did good, because I know that circumstance, and switching cameras and then regaining focus, getting that shot all in a split second is pretty freaking amazing. So congrats. G, I want to ask you a little bit about some of your process and about your making a picture, particularly because, again, you have stated to us that this is your first time. So if you could speak a little bit about what's it like switching from taking a picture with your cell phone to now trying to use a SLR, and then additionally, what it's like for you to now make that picture. So you're doing it so much more intentionally and not as, what I call firing squad, where people are lining up, smiling at the camera, waiting for the picture, where you're now getting something that's much more candid and yet at the same time posed, but not in the standard smile of the world. Talk a little bit about that process for you.
Well, I'm gonna use one of the words Greg just used: patience, massive amounts of patience. I don't really feel I'm very tech savvy, so now getting into ISO and f-stop and all of this stuff and thinking about light and in the workshop, that was something that was discussed a little bit. Where do you want the light? Like, these are things like, I know what I want to see, like I know the product. But the challenge for me was how do I really get to that product? And a few of us have referenced to it. The first day of the class, that concept of instead of taking photos, we're making them. So it was really challenging for me because not only am I new to photography, I do want to acknowledge that this workshop was a space that I felt comfortable as a novice, and I'm there with photographers who have been doing this work for a very long time. Greg said 15 years. So I felt, that it was appropriate and it was comfortable. But what made my challenge even more difficult was I had subjects that I had to connect with. So it wasn't like I encountered subjects, like I knew exactly who I wanted to shoot. This beautiful couple, right? Funny enough, I'm Jamaican and I believe Greg is African-American, and here we go. And here, this is a Haitian couple. So somehow we're drawn. There's like a Haitian theme going through here. But I was determined, and David, I was determined to shoot this couple. They're busy. I'm busy. So before we even get to the actual taking a photograph. It was just like coordinating it. And then once I'm there, I know what I want, but how do I get to that? And then I didn't shoot one person, I'm shooting two people. So one person might like have the perfect expression and the other person blinked, so it was really challenging. I ended up I did that first shoot and then went back and to contact them to go, hey, so thanks again for last week, but I need to come back. And I'm in their home. This is like a very personal space. I'm in their home, and there's a vulnerability to that. But we're Caribbean, and we're also Black folks, Black people in America. But especially as Caribbean people, we don't see LGBTQ people. We don't see their imagery, right? And sometimes we might see them, but they're not identified. So even that couple, like people saw that couple and did not see a couple. People believe that they're sisters or maybe friends. And it was important for me because for myself, like I didn't see imagery of Jamaican lesbians or Haitian lesbians and so on. So it's helpful for me to feel like someone else could see themselves. And then also I think this normalizes us, like having us represented in imagery, in media, it shows people like, hey, that queer people are just like everybody else. So that picture that you had, that the couple where they're sitting down in the couch was actually what I really, really wanted to make this picture here. I felt like it was just showing this like, hey, just like anybody else, these are the things we're doing. We're chilling, we're hanging out there on their cell phone. I just really wanted to capture that. And then the one that made the show, which is the one with the light behind, this picture here, it is stunning, it is beautiful. It was towards the end of this long night that I remember just saying, okay, let's just go in the hall and let's try this. And I felt really grateful that it did make the show.
Excellent. I thank you for sharing. I am cognizant that we are on an hour timeline, which means we're just about 15 minutes from the end. I can't see how much audience we have, but I would highly recommend if there's anything anyone in the audience would like to ask, now would be a great time. It could be about photography. It could be about the process. It could be about, when is the next one? It could be anything. If you have any questions, now would be a great time to post so that we can address them before we end this session. Also, I would also recommend anyone watching, now would be a great time to share so that others who could also catch the show. So please share to your social media so that others who may not have caught this live can get to rewatch it at a later time. Coming back now to sort of like talking to the photographers, the artists who participated, I want to just hear a little bit about, are you happy with what was chosen and what is it that you think will be next for you? So I'll go now to, I'm going to say Ryan to start here. Ryan, if you could talk to us a little bit about, 3 of your images were selected and entered into the show. One was that beautiful image I'm looking behind me because it's over here, Supervision. I thought it was just brilliant. The one we discussed and then one here at the barbershop. Talk to us a little bit about the images that were chosen and what do you plan to do next with your photography based on what you experienced?
Yeah. Am I happy they were chosen? Absolutely. I mean, for the limited amount of time. I mean, again, this is an image of a young Haitian woman migrant, actually stateless. She's stateless in the Dominican Republic, and without papers, she can't get. She's having incredible amount of difficulties finding papers. So just the serendipity of us sort of meeting like that while I'm walking the streets, and again. And I completely agree with Greg. It's about understanding the social context of where you are. For me, not only is she Haitian in a very difficult context, but she's a Haitian woman in a difficult context. And I really love when I make my images, and I love saying that, making images, that when I make them, that I flip the script. Again, it's an opportunity for giving her a voice, which she desperately needs. I mean, again, she wants to be seen. She wants to be seen the way she wants to be seen. But again, it's flipping the script of a Haitian woman now in a sort of a power position, a power role, and I just love how she just happened to be in that little shack there, and that supervision on top of it. So again, I'm very happy that I was lucky enough to be at the right place at the right time, and I think the black and white image there is really again, we have very limited time with full-time work and everything, but I think learning from CW, you have to sort of try something new. I usually shoot color, and I think for the second round of images, I wanted to try something new, and just a daily trip to the barbershop was all I needed to kind of understand, and see something interesting, which I've been many times, but never with a camera, and I think that makes all of the difference, in my opinion.
Thank you for sharing. That's one special barbershop, by the way. It really looks spectacular. So I've never been to a barbershop that's that nicely appointed with chandeliers and this. It was really well done. So thank you for capturing and sharing. As I look at everyone, and I know again time is running short. Danielle, could you speak to us a little bit about what it was for you, knowing the pictures that were selected, and then speak a little bit about what you thought of your image at the Little Haiti Cultural Center, and what is the emotions you had in capturing that particular image?
In capturing that image, I saw an opportunity to portray, I guess you would say, loneliness in a sense. This man, he's actually a regular at the Haitian Cultural Center, and as I was approaching him, I realized, he's just doing his thing, and I caught that photo with the intent of showing, how the colors in the mural, how it clearly represents culture, it represents reunion, and this man is in the corner. And actually going to approach him, he didn't really want to have anything to do with me. That was a really interesting experience, and I realized that, whenever you're going out to capture, you're not always going to find people who want to be highlighted in front of the camera. After going through the frames, I realized, even just by the way that he was positioned off to the side, that really added a good element to the photo.
Thank you. And I just want to finish with you on this thought. What are your thoughts about what was selected from what you submitted? Like, how do you feel about specifically what was included in the show, and how does it impact what you will do in the future?
I felt great about the images that were selected. The entire process really taught me, that whole concept of making a picture, and that's something that I'm going to take on with me every time I go to shoot. Just those little elements that we learned, being able to study light, being able to show emotion, really capture the soul. I think that's very important, and I want to be able to use that visual language to create a visual voice for myself going forward.
Excellent. All right. Thanks so much, Danielle. And again, I'm looking for questions. If there are questions, now would be great. We're winding down the last, maybe 10 minutes of this. And so, thank you, Mark, for your question. When is the next workshop? I love questions that I don't have the answer to. It's a great question. I don't actually know. We will do this again. The actual dates, we don't know yet. But Mark, we will definitely keep you in mind for the future workshops. I do know, more questions that we will share that with you. Is there a mentoring program? Thank you, Merle, to encourage young people talent, gain confidence, training, and exposure. we definitely do have such a program. What I would highly recommend, Merle, is that you go on Island Space's website. It's islandspacefl.org. I do know that we can put that up as a graphic on the screen. And there is a program being worked on right now with that specific goal in mind. So definitely for young people, we do have such a program, and definitely go and sign up on the Island Space Caribbean Museum's website for follow-up. I mean, this is really actually a great thing to do for everyone. You should all sign up so that you can get our newsletters and the different information about upcoming programming. So I highly recommend that everyone go to the website and sign up for future notifications. Mark asks, what was the most difficult photography to make with I'll just say, what was the most difficult photograph to make with each photographer? I don't know if we'll get the time to ask each one, but we're going to try. I'll ask that of Greg Reed at this time. Greg, if you could just speak to what was chosen and what was, as Mark said, you know Mark, he's your great buddy.
Yes.
What was the most difficult thing for you, or the most difficult shot? It may be at the White House, it may be something else. Talk to us about what was your challenge.
So the challenge was the photo of G. And that photo, that the history of that photo is one. There's so many messages in this particular photo, but the first part was 1968 in St. Augustine, Florida. Black people could not get into a pool, and you did. White folks would run out of the pool, would get out of the pool, and they would call the police that would show up with dogs and escort you out of the pool. And G went through a similar event a year ago. And when I saw her in the pool, now I specifically went to the pool knowing that I wanted to capture an image of her in that pool, and possibly the son also in the pool. I didn't know how I was going to get it. There was no particular rhyme or reason for how it was going to happen, but the word patience is there again. So David, I think I ran over to you and I said, well, you know what I'm trying to get? I'm trying to get a shot of G in the pool. And what I wanted to be able to say and understand was that when she was accosted, she was a woman with a son in America. We just went through George Floyd, and here it was, someone was now attacking her about what she had the God-given right to be able to do. And that was about getting into a pool and who she was and the fear that could engulf her. And I just kept seeing all of that greatness that she has in that water, in that pool. And in that space, the way that water surrounded her, there was a lot of confidence in her. There was a lot of confidence in her. And I just kept seeing it. And it just kept hitting me in the face. And it was patience. So she had done freestyle, and she had done breaststroke, and now she was doing the backstroke. And that's where that patience comes in, because I just needed to wait for her to get comfortable in the water and get comfortable in that space and capture that image. So the answer to your question, Mark, that was the hardest one to get, simply because I had to wait for it to hit my brain. And for all that I was trying to tell you was, you have to understand the history of, that time and space that you are in. So contextually, we had what happened to G a year ago, but we also had the context of what happened in 1968 when Black folks couldn't get into swimming pools. And that was a moment that you just could not pass up. And being in the right space, understanding what you're trying to capture, and being able to represent all that she was going through in that one moment was about 60 years worth of history.
Thank you so much for sharing. That's great. I see specifically that we're rounding on the end of time. I do want to allow, I'll say G first, and then I'll ask Ryan and Daniel as well. Speak to Mark's question. What was your hardest, if there was a hardest? And then finally, just make comment on, again, as we wrap up, what it is that you think you will do next.
Yeah, I mean, what was hard for me, they were all difficult. I was trying to tell this story and show this intimate couple without them being graphic. So that was just hard for me to say, do something that's intimate without having to be really conspicuous. And that's what for to translate that these are wives, right? So that overall was that was difficult. And I think this is the one that shows it the most here out of the one that's I shared. Next, I want to do more of this. I need to do more work. I need to do another class, maybe classes. And I want to take a look at people who have done work like this and look at their images. So I'm looking forward to doing more. And I think we're wrapping up. So I'll just say thank you so much. And to tell folks to please, you can go to the museum in person until August 29th to see the show.
Excellent. Good invitation that you can. We're here at the Broward Mall. I'm currently at the museum. You can see some of the work hanging on the wall behind me. Some of the same pictures that we've been discussing. They are here. They are on the wall. I am at the museum currently. So that is definitive. But I do want to ask both Ryan first and then Danielle second. You could just speak to Mark's question. What was most difficult to take, or what was most difficult in the process for you? And then what's next? Real quick to close out. Ryan, you want to go first?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I'll take Mark's question as what was most technically difficult. I think for me, the most technically out of all three was the one where he was lying on the floor, just because there was a lot less space. It was a very narrow, area, and the background was sort of, you had the highlights in the background, and then his, in the foreground, it was completely dark, and I sort of had to find a way to get enough light inside the camera, obviously, and then the editing process. So I think technically it was that picture, and then the second was the woman, the lady in the supervision shack, just because I had to go back a few times. Again, to Greg's point, you have to be patient. You have to be willing to go, to stay with it. If you see something, come back multiple times. You're not going to get the same picture over and over again. So I think the process of getting her comfortable, and then and to share that with me the second time. And then the third was sort of getting outside of my comfort zone again, being able to just take the camera and go and shoot in a seemingly, it's a very routine, I'm going to get a haircut situation. And again, in black and white, and you'd be surprised, how much you can do with the limitations that you have.
Wonderful. I thank you again. As we close out, Danielle, if you could speak to what was most difficult for you, what was either the most difficult shot or most challenging in producing this work, and what's next for you. You're muted.
Sorry. I think the most difficult shot to capture was the photo of the two birds. Like I said earlier, I had to go around the park twice in order to get that shot. I went into the bird encounter knowing the look I was going for. And the first time I went in, the birds were just all over the place. There were still a few people in the encounter visiting with them. So I waited, and when I went back in, I saw these two birds who are actually brothers, and they were just all over each other, and I felt it was right to just zoom in on them and get that compassion that they were sharing with each other. Also, it took me a while to find just that perfect spot, because there was a lot of commotion in the background with the other birds, branches, so I wanted to make sure I got that clean shot of the two birds.
Thank you. What's next, Danielle? What you going to do next? In photography.
What's next for me is I'm going to continue shooting and, creating art with my photos. I'll continue booking assignments and seeing you know, maybe I can get into another exhibition and, you know, just continue doing what I love the most.
That's fabulous. I thank everyone for your participation. This has been great. It's a good time. We've been on, 59 minutes and 59 seconds, and I really appreciate all the audience, those who asked questions. Thank you so much. This is a production of the Island Space Caribbean Museum. I really highly encourage everyone who has watched tonight, or if what you watch at some other time, to please, go on the website, take a look around, but also without question, sign up to receive our newsletters and to be informed of the programming taking place at the Caribbean Museum. And finally, but not anything less than, come and see the show. The work is hanging here physically on the wall. We're right here locally in the Broward Mall. For those who've not been, it's very easy to find. It's right by the water fountain. That entrance, you don't even have to enter the mall. It is literally right here on the outside. There's a big pink entrance, and we're at that pink wall. So come out and visit, see the work, and get to learn more about these wonderful artists who, all with such different backgrounds, bring such rich energy to what we are doing. And I really just thank everyone for being here. I see a lot of people doing these hands of thanks and gratitude. Thanks and gratitude to each and every one of you guys for being here, and for those who watched us, and for those who will watch us in the days to come. Have a great night. This has been a production of the Island Space Caribbean Museum.